Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're doing good. I'm doing great as always. Now in today's video, I'd like to take another look at Fujifilm's recently released X-H2s and talk about how I would like to use this camera as an action sports photographer. Now in my previous video, I went through as a portrait photographer and talked about the camera in that sense of photography. Now in this video, I'd like to get a little bit more specific and talk about action sports photography and some of the features of this camera that I think would be really great for both, amateur, intermediate, and even advanced action sports photographers. Now, if you haven't really checked out the X-H2s very much, I'll just go over some of the main features really quick here. So, going back to my notes, this new camera has an X-Trans CMOS 5 HS 26.16 megapixel image sensor that has a stacked layer structure. So basically, it's a 26.16 megapixel camera. Good, decent size for any professional work you want to do, not so small, not too big that the files are crazy huge size, which is good for taking action sports photography because you always take way too many images at the end of the day. It has an X processor 5 processor in the camera, which is double the processing power of the previous model, which is the XT4. And a couple of the features that are really actually kind of important with action sports photography is this camera has a combination of a mechanical and electronic shutter, which you can switch back and forth through depending on the type of shooting you want to do. Maybe you want to do silent shooting. Maybe you want to shoot up to 40 frames per second, which is really nice for action sports photography. There's also improved AF capabilities with the camera. It has better face recognition, better autofocusing, which is great for shooting portraits or action or anything. It's always great to have your autofocus work and be tack sharp. So this is really improved over previous models. And lastly, the EVF or electronic viewfinder has been redesigned to give you 120 frames per second when you're looking through the viewfinder, and also allows for 100% blackout shooting, which is extremely important when shooting action sports photography because a lot of times you're doing a blast of shooting, maybe a BMX rider or a F1 car, something like that, and you're taking a big burst of images. You want to be able to see that movement of your subject the entire time while you're shooting. Okay, so I'm not like a really technical photographer, so I'm not going to go into like all the super details of the new processor and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of videos, lots of YouTubers out there who do those kind of videos, so check those out. But what I am is an actual, my profession is a professional photographer. So what I wanted to do was actually get out into the park and check this camera out with one of my BMX friends. So I hit up the Shin Yokohama Park here in Japan, and we went and had a nice little session with the camera. It was just a good time. We had about an hour. He had to fly off to France for a recent competition. So we only had about an hour, so I really couldn't, unfortunately, get into like a lot of the smaller options for autofocus and all that kind of stuff. And I'll go over that after I show you our session. But we had a really great time, and all in all, the camera worked awesome. And I really had no issues. There are a couple things that I think I could have done better if I had tested out some of the other settings, which, again, I'll go over in a second. So yeah, check out our little fun session that we had here. And when after that, I'll come back and give you my more detailed thoughts about the camera. Cheers. What's up? Nice. Nice. Nice, nice. Nice. Nice.一回ちょっと場所見たい。どこでやるか。Okay, cool.
아, 完璧。わ、いいですね。やば。 大丈夫か？ナイス。いいね、かっこいい。すげえ難しい。通り見ながらこれを見て撮ってる。でも、いい感じ。
Yeah, that was our session. You know, like I said, it was only a quick hour. He had to fly out to France that evening. He had a lot of stuff to do before his flight. So to start off with the camera, really with action sports photography, one of the big things that helps beginner and intermediate photographers in action sports is having a high frame rate of photos you can take per second. If I'm shooting raw, my Nikon Z9 goes up to 20, which is pretty amazing. I was shooting a competition this weekend and, you know, blasting off so many images, it's crazy. But now this X-H2s can actually get up to 40 frames per second when you're using the electronic shutter. Pretty crazy. It's quite impressive. And, you know, I just put it on 40 frames basically the whole time we were shooting, just because I don't want to miss a moment, I don't have much time, and I just wanted to get as many images as I could while we were there. I must admit, 40 is a lot. It's kind of almost, for like, if I was shooting, say, like an event that I shot this weekend in Yokohama, where I'm shooting from 9 till 5, basically the whole time, flatline BMX, skateboarding, double Dutch, and things like that with a lot of action, a lot of different people, a lot of rounds and stuff like that. I probably wouldn't put this on 40 frames per second just because at the end of the day, I'm literally going to end up with 10,000 photos. Shooting with my Z9 at 20 frames per second, I ended up with about 5,000 photos per day, which is not too much. Like, I'm getting used to it. It's still a lot. But if you should shoot 40 frames per second all day at a competition like that, it's a lot. It's more images than you want to be taking. Saying that, if you're in like what, an hour session like I had with my friend, or you only have like maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes or like 1 or 2 chances to get a trick, throw that 40 frames per second on there. You know, start shooting as soon as the rider comes up to a rail and all the way through, and just get everything. So you know you have like that peak moment of action, because in action sports photography, it is essential to catch that peak point of action. So how I shoot, even with 40 frames per second, is often I will wait until the riders I know they're just about to start into their trick when they're in the air, and I'll just slam down and take a big burst of images through the actual trick, and then I'll go back through and pick the one I like the most. I won't actually like take all the images from the approach and all the images from the landing unless I want to make a sequence afterwards. But in this session, I wasn't really planning on making a sequence. So like for, you know, one example, I have him coming up just into the trick. Look, oh, and there's the one I like the most, which I've already edited, and just coming out of the trick. So, you know, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 photos that I took. It was like, you know, micro of a second. But then I can really pick and fine tune that one that I like the most. So it's really helpful when you know you want to get that, you really only have a couple chances and you really want to get that best timing. Just wait as they're just about to go in, start hitting it, take those bunch of photos, and then come out. And having 40 frames per second is amazing. If you only had like 10, like a camera that I was using at a different job or things like that, you get a lot less to choose from. And in times where a time constraint is really important, the more frames a second is actually, I personally think, the better, especially when you're working a professional photographer like myself. It's not just a hobby, and you have to have images, the best images out at the end of the day. This is really, really helpful. That's just one quick example. Another one is I held it a little longer just to see what I would get. So like here, you know, this isn't the best angle or anything like that, but you can see here where he's come up. And again, you know, this is the peak of the action right here, and I have so many to choose from. And I like how his bike's coming, the back wheel's coming up a little bit here as he goes through it. Now he's done the trick, and yeah, I can pick like, geez, there's a lot of images here that are really good. So, you know, this gives you so many images to choose from. If you're in a rush for time after work and you're not usually used to being able to quickly select images, 40 frames is a lot, and if you're doing this for a lot of stuff all day, like I said, you're gonna have too many images to go through at the end of the day. Maybe you're shooting a skateboarding event and the next person up is the person that won gold at the Olympics last year, and you have to get a good photo of them for your newspaper, your online magazine, your blog, for Instagram, for their Instagram, anything. Go from 10 frames per second to 40 frames per second just for that even one trick. The controls on the camera are super easy. It makes it really easy to be able to switch back and forth and then take the 40 frames per second at that one moment and then switch it back if you want. Camera X is really easy to use, and it's just like a tool that if you can utilize in your shooting, it's really, really nice. Another way I think 40 frames per second in this camera is really helpful when you're a photographer, especially a beginner photographer in action sports photography. Say you've met someone, you met a breakdancer or a parkour athlete, but you don't know that sport very well yourself. So you don't really know the timing of the athlete or the timing of their tricks and stuff like that. So what you can do is just, take those 40 frames per second, take like a 2 or 3 second burst of shots while they're doing their trick. Talk to them afterwards, get them to show you which one is the best timing, and then now you've learned the best timing for that trick and you have so many options to choose from. Whereas if you're only taking a few frames per second, or you're just shooting one single shot each time, you're gonna, at the beginning when you don't know the sport, you're definitely gonna miss images and it's gonna be really hard to get the perfect timing. So, as a beginner, it's really nice to utilize as a learning tool, so you can talk to your athlete and get them to teach you what is the best timing, because like I said, timing is crucial in action sports photography. And as a professional, like a working professional, being able to have those options of even just a fraction of an inch on their board or their bike or their legs, maybe they're closed their eyes, but in the next second they've opened their eyes, so you want that one. Having those extra options while you're working is a lifesaver in sometimes. Sometimes you just don't have the time to, or you don't have the luxury of just shooting one image. Like, if I'm shooting with flash, that's fine, I'll do one image. But like at an event where I can't even put down my flash anyways, I'm gonna be doing like high bursts, like pretty much every trick. It's a part of the camera, and I think it's a really good part of this camera, and it really helps people get good timing in their shots. So I hope that helps. So another one of the improvements I mentioned at the beginning of the video of the camera is the autofocus capabilities of the camera. So this has internally, you can select face recognition, or I think we got animals, cars, bikes, even trains. Like I said in the previous video, people here in Japan love shooting trains. For our session, I set it to human face and just kept it on that. And one thing I should have done is, actually this camera has some really nice custom settings you can use for the stickiness of the autofocus, and it's just under the menu in the autofocus and manual focus. It's autofocus custom settings, and there's I don't know if you can see it here properly, but there's a system here where you can choose the amount of autofocus stickiness to the camera. I didn't really have time to play with this much, and I just shot on default, which worked really great for our portrait session. It worked awesome when you just have one subject in front of your camera. But when you get something a little bit more erratic and moving quicker in that, as in BMX, and when you're shooting in a park where there's more people around and stuff like that, I really suggest you take the time to go through this and test out what works best for your style of shooting, what sport you're doing. Like, I'll just go through it. We have one is multi-purpose, which was what I was using. 2, ignore obstacles and continue on track subject. So this might be like if you're tracking something and say a pole comes in front of you or between you and your subject, or something comes in between you and subject, hopefully we'll ignore that and stay on your subject, which, yeah, it's really good to have. Accelerating, decelerating objects, so like cars, things like that, if we are taking a bike race maybe or something. For suddenly appearing objects, so sometimes when you're shooting street BMX or park BMX, the rider will come around a corner and do something suddenly, or they'll come up from behind a jump and come into your camera suddenly. I could have used this on a couple times. We were trying to do a wall ride, and like I can show you the picture right now. This really turned out a good picture in the end, but when we were doing it, I was having him come into frame really quickly from camera left and then hit the wall, and that was just the composition I had. And the autofocus on the number 1 wasn't hitting it as fast as I hoped. So I wish I would have realized this when I was doing my testing and tried this suddenly appearing object one, number 4. I think it would have helped it work a lot better. And I think if you're in the park, and especially having the rider come from the other side of the ramp and up in the air really suddenly, this might be something good to check. I really wish I had time to go out and test these again. Maybe I'll do that in the future. And the last one is for erratically moving, accelerating, decelerating subjects. This one might be the best one for action sports photography because people are, coming towards a hit really quickly, jumping, slowing down quite fast. Maybe they're turning. There's a lot of different movement that people can do in action sports photography. It's very erratic, very hard to tell what's going to happen. Sometimes in events and stuff like that, I don't even know where people are going to be going. So how could the camera, the AI is good, but it's not perfect. So how could the camera really know on just the base mode? So having this moving, accelerating, decelerating subject could be really good. And then there's also a 6 option where it's custom. You can play with that as much as you want. So I think having these options with the autofocus is really good. It really, you can really get into the nitty gritty of the sport you use and figure out which one you want to do and hopefully improve your autofocus even more. Having the autofocus with the face detector, I found in the park on our day worked actually quite well when I could see his face clearly, or when he was simple, it was just him in the frame. When the camera on just the one was getting a little bit confused was when there would be people in the background, people around us and stuff like that. And obviously the camera isn't connected to my brain and know exactly who in the frame I want it to automatically focus on. So it will jump around a little bit before I've pre-focused, and you have to kind of move it a bit. If things are happening really quickly, this can be a little bit difficult. So what I did when we were shooting was I also put zone in the autofocus and made sure that I had that over the athlete's face or body, just to give a bit of a backup, and that seemed to really help when there was other people around. So it worked well in the end. One time I did have a couple unfortunate problems, or the camera was having a little bit of difficulty, specifically was when we were shooting a rail, and my friend was on the rail with his face up high, and then he would look down, and he has a helmet on, and basically what the camera could see as his face would get scrunched down. And it's like with my hat right now, all you can see is like the tip of my nose and chin. So it's kind of hard to tell that that's a face. And a couple times, like he was moving quite quickly towards me, and at the end, the kind of camera just kind of didn't want to keep up with him on a couple of the shots. Like I think this one here, it just kind of loses the autofocus there. And, I think on the default setting, sure, it's kind of losing what it is and it makes it hard for the camera. It's not really meant, that setting is not really meant for this kind of movement. So again, I think if I had played with this custom settings a bit more, maybe set it on 5 when I was in the park, probably would have done a much better job. I think if you're shooting action sports photography, like I said, you should try these different settings, and hopefully I can get a chance to check this out again in the next week or so, and maybe get back to you about that. And just to say, like, everything I just said about the X-H2s with the autofocus and the face tracking and that, same thing kind of happens with my Nikon Z9, a camera that is basically three times the price. So I was shooting at a skate event this weekend, and I had the face recognition on, and there was times where like the camera was just like farting around quite a bit when I was trying to focus on something because there was other people in the image and stuff like that. Or Flatland BMX when they were spinning. I would kind of lose the focus for like an instant when they turn their back and stuff like that. So in these situations, depending, no matter what camera you're using, sometimes it's best to just shut off the face recognition, go to continuous focus, autofocus, and just make a zone or group focus, and just pick a little square and move that around and follow and track do like a manual tracking is what I do. I'll move it around depending on the composition of the photo I want. So just because a camera has facial tracking and things like that, it's not always the best option for your sport when shooting action sports photography. So again, like I've said this like 5 times probably already, for your sport and how you shoot, you're going to have to play with the camera and figure out what works best for you. Autofocus face tracking works amazing when there's one person, clear view of the face, and it works amazingly well for portraits and stuff. It can get confused though. It's an AI system, so it's not magic. Like, Merlin's not sitting in here casting spells on where to autofocus and stuff like that. So you're gonna have to play with it. It works great, but again, you're gonna have to play with it. Now, the improved EVF is something that's really, Fujifilm's done an amazing job with the EVF compared to cameras I've tested in the past. In the past, I was shooting a BMX race, and I was trying to track the racer as they were coming along and shoot. And it just would, like, it would track it, and then I start shooting, and then blackout, 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 and then, oh, the rider's over there. It's like, but I'm trying to shoot here, and it's just like, this isn't working. 120 frames per second, so super smooth. And even when you're shooting 40 frames per second or anything like single shots, there's no blackout. I can just basically shoot a huge stream of images, as many as I want, and I can see the action the whole time. Super helpful, really, really important, especially quick moving. Maybe you're zoomed in quite a bit and the athlete is moving really quickly in compared to your camera. Say you're shooting surfing and it's a really quick day and you're trying to keep tracking with them, and you're shooting as they come down to the bottom, but you want to keep shooting in that sequence to get them come up, and maybe they're doing like a huge trick up top with spray everywhere, and you're missing things because of the blackout. You'll be able to track them. You don't know what's going on. So having a really nice EVF where you can actually track and not worry about blackout, super helpful, really, really good. And I think Fujifilm did a good job on it. I didn't have any problems with blackout while I was shooting. I was able to keep up with my athlete the whole time, and it wasn't an issue at all. So yeah, good, great, good work on that. Now, last thing, and I actually raved quite a bit about this in my last video, is this flip out monitor. Until recently, a lot of professional grade cameras did not have a flip out monitor. My D5, yeah, it just happens to be right here. Does not have a flip out monitor. I got used to shooting without one for years and years and years, but I was always jealous of people who did have one, because I would always be laying on the ground or like trying to get into interesting positions, and it was just really difficult. The Z9 has one, but it's good. It's great. I like it. I use it a lot on the weekend, but it's not as articulating as this one that Fuji has put on here. So I can go all the way around, shoot some vlogs, yay. I can go all the way to the top. So if I want to shoot, I can shoot from above and I can see exactly what I'm shooting. I can go all the way down and shoot all the way on the ground. I can just put this on the ground and I can see it and I can shoot away. I can even shoot using the screen as well. So this screen is really, really nice when you want to get kind of different angles and stuff like that. Action sports photography is very creative. It's a really fun way to be creative in photography, and it's nice to be able to shoot all these different angles. Maybe I need to kind of almost stick my arm out and shoot around a corner. This is really helpful like this. You know, there's a lot of different things you can do with this. So I'm really glad that Fujifilm put this on there. I know I would use the snot out of this for sure in my shooting. And like I said before, I'll probably never buy another camera that does not have a flip out screen. It's just, I'm so used to it now with my Z9, and something like this is just really, really helpful when you're shooting. It's another tool you can use. And you know what? I had some comments on my past video, oh, I don't like the screen, blah, blah, blah. It's, I think it's a gimmick. Well, the great thing about this screen too is I can just flip it out and actually put it away. So now there's no screen, nothing's gonna get scratched in my bag or anything like that, which is really nice. That's actually super simple, but it's really actually great because now I don't have to worry about the screen and I can just put it away. And it's not a nuisance or anything like that. And if I just want to have it like normal, like a normal quote unquote camera, I can pop it back in there. So really versatile, really easy to use. Can't complain about it too much, but I do have one point which I mentioned before as well. This is only one point of contact on the camera, not super strong. I could probably snap this pretty easily, you know, big guy. But when shooting action sports photography, you never know what's going to happen. On the weekend, I was shooting some breakdancing, crew event. I was down low shooting, and one of the crew guys, one of the dancers came and actually fell on top of me. I was luckily able to block my camera, and we were all fine. We apologized afterwards. It was probably my fault more than his. But say if he had fallen on here, and his weight had gone on that would have broken that off right away. So like, you know, any equipment, you got to watch what you're doing. And yeah, just be careful with your equipment. It's not bulletproof at all in any way. So yeah, all in all, really like the camera. I think for beginners, intermediate, and even professionals, if you're already into Fuji, but you want more frames per second than that, great camera to pick up. It's super, honestly, I think it's quite cost effective at, what was it, $24.99 or something like that. Double check, I'll put the real price down below here. Yeah, so, you know, again, if you have any questions or comments about what I've gone over in the video, any questions about action sports photography in general, hit me up anytime. I love hearing from you guys, and cheers, thank you, get out shooting, and I hope you have a good day.